Alright, we left off with what the resurrection is not. Now let's figure out what it is. Which, that depends on what your definition of is. What then does the resurrection mean? Let's turn to the gospel accounts and look at 3 points that are essential for understanding what the disciples were actually claiming when they said that Jesus had been raised from the dead. First, the resurrected Jesus has a body. He is not a ghost. This is perhaps clearest in Luke's account of Jesus' appearance to the disciples in the upper room. As they were saying this, Jesus stood among them and said, "Peace to you," but they were startled and frightened and supposed that they saw a spirit. And he said to them, "Why are you troubled, and why do questionings rise in your hearts? See my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see. For a spirit has not flesh and bones, as you see that I have." And when he had said this, he showed them his hands and feet. And while they still disbelieved for joy and wondered, he said to them, "Have you anything here to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he took it and ate before them. Note well that the disciples' first reaction is to assume that Jesus is a spirit. This shows us, for one thing, that they believed in ghosts, and therefore are untrustworthy. It also shows us that they were familiar with the idea of encountering the disembodied spirit of a dead person. They had imaginary friends. In order to correct this misunderstanding, Jesus insists that he has flesh and bones, that is, he has a real human body. And just in case the disciples have any doubts about the reality of this body, he asks them for something to eat. Although spirits might be able to do lots of things because they lack bodies, sitting down to a nice meal of broiled fish is not one of them. So this guy believes in disembodied spirits too. There are few things more bodily than the act of eating. Second, the resurrected Jesus has the same body. Well, I thought a couple of them couldn't recognize him, so that he had while he was alive. That's why he still bears the wounds of the cross, as if it's so hard to poke a hole in your hands. David Blaine's done that one too. Jesus implies as much when he shows his disciples his hand and feet. Gospel of John's account of Jesus' appearance to Thomas makes this explicit. Now, Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them. So the other disciples said, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and place my finger in the marks of the nails, and place my hand in his side, I will not believe." 8 days later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. The doors were shut, but Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here." Come on, guys, that's pretty funny. "And see my hands and thumb. Put your hand and place it in my side. Do not be faithless, but believing." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." That's a real funny one, because you could believe anything with that attitude. Like, why not believe in Muhammad with that? You know, I've never seen Muhammad. I guess I should have faith. He's the prophet. Literally any belief system could be. That's why faith is so dangerous. And I believe the work of the devil, metaphorically. If God gave us these big, beautiful brains and the ability to think, why would he tell us to shut it down? Like, that's not godly. That's not something the Creator would do. That's something Satan would do. Tell you, "Oh, you have the ability to think. Just don't think." All right. As this account makes very clear, the risen Jesus has not discarded his human body like an old garment. The crucifixion has literally left its marks on him forever, but without conquering his life. Moreover, notice also that when Thomas is confronted with the reality of the resurrection, his response is an unequivocal affirmation of Jesus' divinity, according to some other guy 80 years later. For Thomas, the resurrection of Jesus after his death vindicates the claim that Jesus made about his divinity during his life. Third and finally, the resurrected Jesus has a transformed body. Although it is the same body, it now possesses new extraordinary qualities. Level up! For example, in his resurrected body, Jesus can walk through walls, veil his presence, and appear when and how he will. As if it's so hard to hide in a closet and then come out once the door's shut. Guys, that is, even if that happened right in front of you, that shouldn't convince you of anything. Consider his appearance to the 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus, and to the apostles when they were hiding for fear. That very day, 2 of them were going to a village named Emmaus, and after 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all the things, while they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Maybe it was a different person. On the evening of that day, the first day of the week, the doors being shut where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." Contrary to what some readers assumed, the disciples on the road to Emmaus did not fail to recognize Jesus. It's not as if they've forgotten what he looked like after only 3 days. We've talked about this one before, but anecdotal evidence in our memories after traumatic events are not to be trusted. Even in the very extreme case of like rape victims, they often misidentify their rapist. I don't know what's the right word. And yeah, people go to jail for decades because a rape victim misidentifies the perpetrator of the crime. So it's not that hard to believe. Okay. Gospel says very clearly their eyes are kept from recognizing him. In other words, the resurrected Jesus can change or veil his appearance. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's just like, you have to believe in so many just unsupported facts to weave together this insane story that's not even good. It doesn't even tell good ethics. It doesn't even paint God as a good person. So why jump through all these mental hoops just to have an evil God? I mean, look at the things he tells us to do, and you want to like shut down your mind, jump through mental hoops just to weave together this story that's bad? It makes no sense, guys. In other words, the resurrected Jesus can change or veil his appearance. Likewise, in the accounts of the disciples on Easter Sunday, the risen Jesus passes through shut doors. It didn't even actually say that. It said, even though the door was shut, he stood among them. How can he do this? Oh, it's so hard to hide in a closet. Which there is a big theory about, Jesus and all these guys hanging out in the desert for weeks on end. Maybe they were in the closet. How can he do this? Because after the resurrection, he possesses what the Apostle Paul refers to as the glorified body, one that has been radically changed, 1 Corinthians. I did get that backwards in the last one. Acts of the Apostles is Luke. I'm pretty sure Corinthians is Paul. But also Luke was written anonymously, so it's not really by Luke. In short, when the disciples say that Jesus was raised from the dead, they did not mean that he was restored to earthly life, nor did they mean that his soul was exalted to heaven. Instead, they meant that Jesus had been restored. God, this guy's looping. To bodily life, a new glorified bodily life. In this glorified body, Jesus would never die again, ever. Because we watched him forever.